The most dangerous manipulator in a person's life rarely yells. They don't throw things, they don't punch walls to intimidate you. Instead, they sigh.
They play the victim.
Exactly. They quietly, methodically convince their target that the target is the one destroying the relationship. Welcome to The Debate. Today, we are opening the door on a deeply unsettling psychological dynamic.
Covert narcissism.
Right. And the central question we are wrestling with today is this. When dealing with a covert narcissist, is the true horror found in the calculated, predatory way they mask their grandiosity to extract power? Or is the most critical element the systemic destruction of the victim's reality and nervous system?
It's such an intense topic.
It really is. Now, as a behavioral profiler, I view covert narcissism as a highly strategic, predatory pursuit of power. It's where human vulnerability is consciously weaponized to trap targets.
I come at this from an entirely different angle, actually. As a trauma-informed therapist, my focus is on the insidious trauma bond. I am looking at the neurobiological trap.
The physical effects.
Right. The trap that forces victims to walk on eggshells and completely lose their grip on reality.
Well, to unpack this, we really have to look closely at the pathology itself. Because the covert narcissist is, above all things, a master of disguise. When we strip away the outward presentation, the clinical observation is clear.
Yeah.
The covert narcissist shares the exact same pathological core as the loud, overt narcissist. They possess the same profound lack of emotional empathy.
And that same deep-seated entitlement.
Exactly. And they have the same desperate reliance on external validation, which we refer to as narcissistic supply. But they do not demand that supply by standing on a table and shouting about their greatness.
No, they don't.
They take up space quietly. The vulnerability, the chronic anxiety, the constant self-pity, these are defensive costumes. They are cloaking an underlying grandiosity.
Right.
I frame their initial approach as the ultimate Trojan horse of pity. They do not breach a victim's boundaries by force or dominance. They manufacture a crisis.
They always have a crisis.
Yes. They present themselves as so fragile, so consistently misunderstood by a cruel world, that the victim willingly opens their own emotional gates to rescue them. It is a quiet, calculated manipulation to secure power without ever making a direct demand.
This is exactly what trips victims up. They get so focused on analyzing the narcissist's intent, they spin their wheels wondering, are they doing this on purpose?
Right, looking for the master plan.
Exactly. Are they some evil mastermind plotting my downfall? And by asking those questions, the focus shifts entirely away from the epistemic damage happening to their own brain.
Epistemic damage, meaning?
Meaning the erosion of your ability to trust your own mind, your own memory, and your own perception of reality. Whether this behavior is a calculated strategy or simply a rigid defense mechanism of a fragmented, empty self is secondary.
I see.
The true horror is how covert abuse entirely bypasses the victim's natural psychological defenses. Because the narcissist appears sensitive and wounded, the victim lowers their guard. You don't put up armor for a wounded bird.
That's a great point.
The narcissist conditions the victim to prioritize the narcissist's fragile ego over their own basic sanity and emotional survival. The damage to the victim's nervous system is the core issue here, not the forensic profile of the abuser.
I understand why you prioritize the victim's experience. I do. But you cannot dismantle a prison without understanding how the architect built it.
Fair enough.
We have to look at the mechanics of the trap. Let's look at the very first stage of this dynamic, the sob story.
Oh yes, the sob story.
The strategic weaponization of pity. Early in a relationship, a covert narcissist will rapidly overshare elaborate personal tragedies.
Always.
They have a cruel ex-partner who took everything from them. They have cold, unfeeling parents. They have a boss who is deeply envious of their unrecognized genius.
Right.
The world is just out to get them. Exactly. They construct this narrative of chronic mistreatment specifically to bypass the target's emotional boundaries.
And that tactic is devastating because it specifically preys on driven, highly empathetic people. The targets aren't weak,
Often they are individuals who experience childhood emotional neglect themselves.
So they have that vulnerability.
Right. Their nervous systems were wired early in life to associate caretaking with love and connection. The subconscious thought is, if I fix this broken person, I will finally be safe and loved. The covert narcissist's display of vulnerability acts as a magnet for that specific type of empathy. They take the victim's greatest strength, which is their capacity for deep compassion, and turn it into their most dangerous vulnerability.
Wait, look at how they use pity. It isn't just an accidental attraction where two wounded souls happen to meet. It is a highly effective predatory sorting mechanism.
You think it's that conscious?
I really do. They are testing the waters. They are throwing out these stories of woe to see who will take the bait. Who will offer to pay the bill, who will stay up until 3 a.m. managing their emotional crisis.
Right.
I refuse to accept the idea that they are just helplessly acting out primitive defenses. This is a targeted search for a dynamic the clinical literature refers to as a nurse with a purse.
A nurse with a purse.
That is exactly what they are hunting for. They are looking for a highly competent, successful partner to regulate them practically, financially, and emotionally. They want the benefits of a capable partner, someone to manage the household, earn the income, plan the social calendar, and act as a human shock absorber, all while the narcissist gets to remain the eternal, untouchable victim.
And they get all that without giving anything back.
Exactly. They extract all the benefits of a partnership while contributing zero reciprocal care.
Well, I don't deny that the dynamic functions as a sorting mechanism. And the nurse with a purse reality is incredibly common in my practice. But calling it a conscious predatory pursuit implies a level of mustache-twirling villainy that contradicts foundational developmental psychology.
How so?
Well, covert narcissism typically stems from early childhood disruptions where the child never formed a secure sense of self. They didn't learn where they end and other people begin. Deep down there is a profound psychological void.
Sure, the underlying insecurity.
Exactly. They harbor these hidden fantasies of superiority as a shield against intolerable shame. So when they spin that sob story, on a conscious level, they truly believe they are the perpetual victim of an unfair world.
So you're saying they believe their own lies?
Basically, yes. The tragedy isn't that a predator caught a prey. The tragedy is that the empathetic partner steps in to heal a wound that is fundamentally unhealable, because the narcissist lacks the basic neurological capacity for reciprocal affective empathy.
But let's look at what happens the moment that empathetic partner steps in. Whether the narcissist believes their own lies or not, the behavior quickly shifts from seeking rescue to inflicting harm.
That is true.
Once the empathetic partner is hooked, the mask of the innocent victim slips into subtle devaluation, and this is where the erosion of reality begins.
The subtle digs.
Right. A covert narcissist rarely engages in explosive, overt rage. They do not scream. They use passive aggression. They rely on disguised criticism and deflective, backhanded compliments.
Oh, those are the worst.
They will say something like, "You're pretty smart for someone who didn't go to college." Or, "I love how you just wear anything. You don't even care how you look."
Just listening to those examples is exhausting.
Right? It is meticulously designed to deflate the partner while maintaining complete plausible deniability.
It is the absolute definition of an invisible trap. The sheer frustration of dealing with that plausible deniability is what brings people into my office completely broken. You cannot fight a ghost.
No, you can't.
If someone screams in your face, your nervous system registers the threat. You know you are being attacked. You can defend yourself or run. But when the insult is delivered with a sweet smile, or disguised as benevolent concern, your brain misfires.
It creates that intense confusion.
Exactly. You question yourself. You wonder, did I just misinterpret that? Are they just trying to be helpful?
And if you try to address it, the goalposts instantly shift. The moment a partner meets one emotional or practical requirement, the target moves.
Always.
And if the partner points out that the rule just changed, the narcissist relies on selective memory. They simply erase the event. They say, "I never said that," or "You're making things up again," or the ultimate weapon, "You are just being way too sensitive."
Yes.
And that specific form of denial leads directly to what psychologists call betrayal blindness.
Betrayal blindness. Break that down.
Well, the human brain is a survival machine. When a victim is confronted with this profound cognitive dissonance, the massive gap between the person who played the sweet, wounded soul in the beginning and the person currently delivering these insidious passive-aggressive digs, the brain literally cannot hold those two realities at the same time.
So it has to choose one.
Right. To preserve the attachment bond which the brain believes it needs to survive, it literally blocks out the reality of the abuse. The victim becomes blind to the betrayal. It is a protective mechanism.
Wow.
But the confusion gets so severe, the dissonance so loud, that victims resort to recording their own conversations. They start taking screenshots of text messages and hiding them in secret folders on their phones just to verify their own reality.
Because they feel like they're going crazy.
Exactly. When you are recording your spouse just to prove to yourself that you aren't crazy, the epistemic damage is catastrophic. You have entirely lost your internal compass.
And I argue that epistemic damage is entirely by design. It is the ultimate form of control. Because what happens when the victim finally brings that recording or that text message to the narcissist?
It rarely goes well.
Right. What happens when they finally pierce through the betrayal blindness and attempt to hold the covert narcissist accountable for a specific action?
The narcissist does not engage with the facts. They deploy their ultimate weapon, emotional withdrawal.
The silent treatment.
Yes.
The silent treatment is where the psychological abuse becomes deeply physical. It is a devastating tactic. When confronted, they retreat, they sulk, they give you a cold, dead stare, or they leave the house without saying where they are going. And increasingly, we see them weaponize emotional distress and therapy speak.
Using therapy speak is so common now.
It is. They will claim their boundaries are being violated by your anger, or they will use a sudden, highly convenient depressive episode as a shield against accountability. They'll look at the floor and say, I guess I'm just a terrible person. You should just leave me. I can't do anything right.
Right, forcing you to comfort them.
That's not depression. That's weaponized guilt. It is a highly effective tactic to completely shut down open communication. Suddenly, the victim is comforting the abuser. The victim is forced to apologize for bringing up their own legitimate grievances.
I simply don't buy that we can sum this up merely as a tactical, calculated shield that focuses entirely on the words being spoken and ignores the physiological reality of what is happening in the room.
Okay, explain the physiological side then.
Let me break down the neurobiology of what that silent treatment actually does to the partner, because that is why the victim physically cannot walk away. The science of the trauma bond is undeniable. When the narcissist withdraws their affection, the victim's hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the HPA axis, is activated.
The body's stress response.
Right. This is the body's central stress response system. Their system is flooded with cortisol. They are thrust into a state of severe hypervigilance. Their heart rate climbs. Their sleep fractures. Their digestive system literally shuts down because the body is preparing for a primal threat.
The primal threat being that the person they rely on for safety has suddenly become the source of danger.
Exactly that. The brain perceives social rejection from an attachment figure as a literal threat to physical survival. So the victim is sitting there flooded with cortisol, terrified, trying to figure out how to fix a problem they didn't create. And then, what happens?
The narcissist comes back.
Yes, the narcissist finally returns. They offer a single crumb of affection. Maybe it's a quiet apology, or maybe they just ask, "What's for dinner?" in that old, warm tone of voice. And the sudden relief of that interaction triggers a massive release of dopamine and oxytocin in the victim's brain.
So it's like a drug.
It is. This is the exact mechanism B.F. Skinner studied with the partial reward schedule. The unpredictability of the reward is what chemically reinforces the bond. If a slot machine pays out every time, it's boring.
Sure.
If it never pays out, you walk away. But if it pays out just often enough, unpredictably, you become addicted. It is a literal neurochemical addiction. The brain associates the abuser with both the life-threatening stress and the life-saving rescue. The victim develops a dependency on the abuser for their own emotional regulation.
That is a staggering biological reality. The slot machine analogy clarifies exactly why rational people stay in irrational situations. But let me challenge you on the implications of that.
Okay.
If the brain is entirely hijacked by this partial reward schedule, if cortisol and dopamine are being manipulated that severely, how can anyone possibly escape?
It's incredibly difficult.
Right. If it is truly a neurochemical prison, is cognitive awareness even enough? Can a victim read a book on narcissism, realize they are being manipulated, identify the epistemic damage, and just walk away?
That is the most tragic part of this dynamic. Cognitive awareness alone is almost never enough. You can know exactly what is happening. You can have all the vocabulary. You can know the terms gaslighting and covert narcissism, and your body will still physically crave the abuser.
Wow.
Because of the neurochemistry.
Yes.
Because the trauma is stored somatically. It lives in the nervous system, not just in the prefrontal cortex. This is why traditional talk therapy, where you just sit and analyze the relationship, often falls incredibly short. Systemic recovery requires somatic experiencing.
Explain what somatic experiencing looks like in practice for someone trapped in this cycle.
It means working directly with the body, before you try to rationalize with the mind. Survivors have to learn to regulate their autonomic nervous system. They have to identify where the stress literally lives in their muscles.
Like physical tension?
Exactly. The tightness in the chest, the clenched jaw. They use physical grounding techniques to bring the heart rate down. Conceptually, they often use therapies that map out the psyche, identifying the specific inner child part of them that feels abandoned and terrified, and learning to comfort that part themselves rather than relying on the abuser to do it. You have to physically calm the body's alarm bells before the mind can execute an exit strategy.
So the physical stabilization has to precede the logistical separation.
Right.
But what about the interim? What about the period where they are still in proximity to the abuser? Leaving is rarely a clean break. It is often complicated by entangled finances, housing crises, or co-parenting children.
During that interim period, they have to use highly specific protective communication strategies. The most common advice you hear is to use the gray rock method,
which is essentially making yourself as uninteresting and unresponsive as a boring gray rock to starve the narcissist of any emotional reaction.
Right. You give one-word answers, you show no emotion. But gray rock can sometimes backfire spectacularly with a covert narcissist.
Why is that?
Because they are so deeply hypersensitive to rejection. Complete emotional withdrawal from the victim can trigger a massive narcissistic injury. It signals to them that they are losing control, which causes the covert narcissist to escalate their passive aggressiveness or launch a smear campaign to punish the victim.
That makes sense.
So, we often teach a nuanced alternative called yellow rock.
I think the distinction there is crucial. How does yellow rock function differently in the dynamic?
Yellow rock involves remaining internally detached but maintaining social appropriateness on the outside. You offer pleasantries, you say good morning or have a good day at work, you might smile politely.
But no depth.
Exactly. You give absolutely zero deep emotional reaction. You do not explain yourself, you do not defend your choices, you do not engage in their manufactured crises. It starves the narcissist of the emotional dysregulation they crave from you. You know, the tears, the arguments, the desperate apologies, all while keeping the surface interactions smooth enough to protect your own nervous system from an escalating conflict.
It sounds like tactical diplomacy in a hostage situation.
It basically is.
It's a behavioral mechanism to deny them their primary fuel. It prevents the narcissist from claiming, "You're being so cold to me," which is their favorite pivot back to victimhood.
Exactly.
It denies them the evidence they need to maintain their delusions of superiority. Because we have to remember, underneath the shyness, underneath the anxiety and the manufactured helplessness, clinical metrics show us that these individuals score incredibly high on egocentrism and entitlement.
Oh, absolutely.
They truly believe they are temperamentally different, fundamentally misunderstood, and vastly superior to most people. When you use yellow rock, you're quietly, methodically disengaging from their false reality without triggering an explosion.
You are preserving your own reality, and reclaiming your reality is the entire battle. It requires holding a very difficult framework in your mind.
Which is?
You have to accept that you can simultaneously love or miss the warm moments of the partner you know, the crumb of affection that kept you hooked, and acknowledge that the relationship is deeply toxic and fundamentally destroying your sanity.
Well, we have covered incredible ground today. We've examined the dark mechanics of this dynamic from both the outside in and the inside out. Looking at the evidence, my position remains grounded in the behavioral reality.
As a profiler, naturally would.
Right. The clinical data and the patterns of manipulation reveal the covert narcissist as the ultimate wolf in sheep's clothing. They are a predator who leverages our most noble human impulse, which is the instinct to care for the vulnerable, to rescue the hurting, to offer empathy. They use that as a weapon for absolute control.
Yeah?
Through strategic victimhood, disguised criticism, and weaponized guilt, they systematically dismantle a competent partner to secure their own endless need for narcissistic supply.
And my stance remains rooted in the physiological reality of the target. Regardless of whether the narcissist is engaging in masterful, conscious calculation or simply acting out the rigid, pathetic defense mechanisms of a fragmented, empty self.
The intent doesn't change the impact.
Exactly. The result is exactly the same. The trauma bond is a neurobiological prison. The true horror isn't the narcissist's grand hidden strategy. It is the profound epistemic damage inflicted on the victim. Recognizing the erosion of your own reality and doing the hard physical somatic work to regulate your hijacked nervous system is the only real path to freedom.
We certainly find common ground in the reality that the psychological damage here is devastating. The sheer exhaustion of constantly walking on those eggshells, of constantly second-guessing your own memory, leaves deep, lasting scars.
It really does.
But it is clear we maintain a strong tension over the core driver of this behavior. Is it an actively predatory sorting mechanism designed to extract resources? Or is it a primitive, tragic psychological deficit that creates massive collateral damage?
I think it is exactly that tension that makes this topic so vital to dissect. Complex psychological abuse rarely fits neatly into one box. There is so much more to explore in the source material, particularly regarding somatic recovery, the specifics of boundary setting, and the long journey of reclaiming one's peace.
Absolutely.
Understanding both the predatory mechanics you focus on and the trauma-informed neurobiology I focus on provides a much more complete map of this very dangerous territory.
It provides the map necessary to navigate out of the maze. It gives the listener the tools to look at their own relationships and ask the hard, uncomfortable questions. Are you caught in this invisible trap? Which brings us right back to the warning we started with. If you find yourself chronically exhausted, if you are recording your own conversations just to prove to yourself that you aren't crazy, and if you are constantly managing someone else's fragile, unpredictable ego, will pay very close attention. Because the most dangerous manipulator in your life rarely yells. They sigh. And it is entirely up to you to figure out what that quiet sigh is really costing you.